I don't know how you can sum up a whole people in a whole country after just being in a place for a week, but I will tell you my personal experience, which is we had some interviews set up ahead of time, and then others we're hoping that we could get some people on the street to talk to. Some might speak English, maybe some we'd talk to through a translator. And we did find some of those, but mostly it was people coming up to us and saying, hey, what are you doing? Where are you from? And my favorite was right on the first day of Eid, which is the celebration of the end of Ramadan. We go to the big mosque. There's been the special prayer, this big occasion. And then afterwards, we're standing there, and all these little kids come running up to us, and they've got little sacks with candy, and they handed one to me. And in talking with them and then talking with their mothers, they had put these together to celebrate the holiday to bring happiness to other people. And they picked us among their other people to hand that to. And I think that sort of tells the story of Turkish people, their friendliness and their openness and willingness to share. That's part of the culture, that you go in the house and they will share whatever they have with you. I've been really grateful for the chance to talk to people here in person about what is most important to them. And it's always a little bit of an icebreaker. People have to decide, seriously, we're going to just talk with you, a stranger, about these deep feelings of my heart. But I think once there's a smile and once there's some sense of sincerity and some vulnerability, as soon as I share, they share. And you just feel that connection happen. And I'm just so grateful to have this experience. I've met 3 or 4 people on this information and this interviewing, this gathering expedition, so to speak, that I will always remember and that I've learned from something really deep because they had a deep well to share from. We got to meet with a family in the area of Cappadocia. He's a farmer, and she works there in the home. They have, I think, what's like the remnant of an ancient Roman home where it would be built around a courtyard. And that courtyard is where they have their kitchen garden, and that's what she fed us from. And then they have their farm where they grow everything else, the cow, sheep, everything. And so it was a chance to go into their home, and they had prepared a meal in the tandoor oven, they call it. It had been baking for hours and hours in the coals inside this oven. And the first thing we did was they took us in, and they were very happy to lift the lid, of course, and then we have that moment where that aroma comes up from everything that's been slow cooking with the spices and the beans and the stew meat, and just heavenly, just heavenly. Walking into the kitchen of the farmhouse was so much better than being on a phone call or a Zoom call for me, which is usually how I talk to my guests who live far away from me. But to be there in their farm, and even though we don't speak each other's language beyond please, thank you, hello, what's your name, I think food is one of the international languages, and I felt like we communicated on a very deep level. After the meal, we had a chance to talk about faith a little bit, how they'd grown up in their families, were they very observant. And what I felt from them was a simplicity that really reached me. It wasn't that they had studied and studied for hours and hours, although they do read regularly, they observe the daily prayers. But it was just the simplicity of, we believe because there's a God. And then they go on with their lives and they just trust in that. I think anybody who has kind of a volume of sacred knowledge that came from God, that came through prophets, can relate to anybody else who's in that situation. In fact, I really love how the Muslims in the Quran are told to respect the people of the book, meaning the Old Testament, the New Testament. There's a respect for the parts of the Bible and the people who believe in that. And I really relate to the idea that one can have a favorite verse or a favorite chapter that you might recite or that you might recall, because I have my own favorite verses that I kind of cling to, and they're my touchstones. One of the highlights so far from me has been the idea that we were at home in our office, and I said, I really wish I knew more about the Sufi mystics, and especially the whirling dervishes, because is that a real term even? And then I find myself 3 weeks later with the chance to speak to the sheikh, the chief leader of that type of worship, that mystic worship, and right in Konya, which is a town that's known for being the center in the training. He invited us into his office that's filled with calligraphy from the Quran, that's filled with the special flute, the ney, that they use to play, and that was Rumi's very favorite instrument. And sometimes when you meet someone who's important to a lot of people, you get the idea that they recognize that. And I loved his humility and the idea that the whole practice, the whole training of becoming one of the dervishes is to let go of all of that. It's to let go of your ego, to concentrate everything on God. And when you meet somebody who does that, they have this spiritual power. And even through his smile and his laughter, there was this thing there that I have felt, and probably everyone has met on a few occasions, a person who arrived with this something extra that made me want to strive for that myself. It's strange in an interview to sit with someone whose language you don't speak and they don't speak yours. So we sit there and initially we smile, we nod, we're glad to be there until the translators arrive. But one thing we could bond over was family. And so in one of those suddenly silent moments where all the technical folks are changing batteries, doing whatever needs to be done, that was a moment to connect. And so I pulled out my phone with pictures of my wife and my kids and a couple of little granddaughters. And that was fun to make a connection. And then he told me about this is how many children I have and what he hopes for them. And it's nice to just connect with people on that very, very basic human level, what is the very most important. And we talked about God, we talked about family, and those are the top two. So maybe you've heard the term whirling dervish, like some ancient Arabian mystic thing, and it is a mystic thing. The whole idea of mysticism was a mystery to me, but we hear about Christian mystics, really like St. Francis of Assisi. We hear about Hindu and Buddhist mystics. Well, here are Islamic mystics, and they are the Sufi. And this tradition of turning and turning is turning your heart and your mind to God. And when I asked him what is in the mind of the dervishes, he said, Allah. 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 That as they turn, they call out to God, and the whole point of any mystic in any tradition is not to have this mediated experience of understanding God through either a text or what someone else tells you. It is, I think, the central feature of true faith, which is to have a personal experience with God, nothing in between. For my own faith as a Christian, I am just astounded at how that little tiny group of people got spread out everywhere. Some of them living in caves for months at a time to hide from people who were coming to find them. You remember Saul had letters to go to all these different places and get people and drag them away before his conversion to Paul. And just to think how somehow with that tenuous thread, what I believe in somehow has made it all the way till today. So if I had my wish, I would just bring everybody here. It's just the whole idea that when we go anywhere and we really meet the people on a level where they're having a meal in their home out in a little tiny country village, and we hear that their family has been here for generations and generations, or whether we're talking to someone who's a leader of a religious organization and you can sense from them their dedication and that they have given up the pursuit of comfort or other things to pass on what they know. I just want everybody to meet people like that, and I want to bring them home to meet the people like that that I know. If we could do that, and maybe that's what we're trying to do through In Good Faith. We can't all go everywhere, and I can't bring everybody with me, but you're coming with me right now. For me, the success of any trip can be measured not in, did I get to check off the Eiffel Tower? Did I get to the Acropolis? Or here in Turkey, did I get to see the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque and every other important mosque? The measure of success of a trip like this is, who did I meet, and who was I surprised by, and who did I make a connection with? Even going through the park and someone's there with their child, the child does something silly, you see it, the parent knows that you see it, and you just make this little eye contact like, yeah, been there, I've been there, done that. And so it's the connections and the chances to sit down and talk with people that is what makes a trip really successful. A question that I like to ask people in a foreign place, to me, is what do you wish the people back home in the US would know about you and your country? You know, they never talk politics. They always start talking faith and family and getting along with each other. And they will say, with their hand over heart, I would say 8 times out of 10, that you are my brothers and you are my sisters. And sometimes it's a little hard to keep talking when people really feel that, and you can sense that it's real because I feel that too. I have the most amazing job because if I want to talk to somebody, I have an excuse to call whoever it is and say, we have this show and we like to talk to people and we want to hear from you. And sometimes they're a little surprised because they think we want a list of facts or they want some debate or something. It's like, no, I just want to listen to you. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I get to talk to people I would never get to, and I've even called some sort of personal heroes I've really admired over the years, and when they say yes, that's a real payday in a way that is not monetary at all. Just the chance to hear the wisdom and the life experience from someone you really admire. Sometimes people ask me, what is your show In Good Faith? And I say, we listen to people's personal experience with faith and with belief, how they see God working in their life. And sometimes their answer puzzles me. They'll say, well, why? Like, that's not reason enough to do what we do. And I'm really astounded by that because I don't know if there's anything more important, at least to me, to learn about other people's journey of faith, what they've been through, how they got through it, why they still believe when they could maybe choose not to in difficult situations. It may feel self-evident to me, but I want people to know that there is a spiritual magic to listening. For some reason, it's really rude in certain places to talk about religion. You just don't bring that up because of all of the historical conflicts. And we can go through and we can see where these people oppress these people. And it goes back and forth both ways, especially here in Turkey, where everyone who came through from the Persians to the Greeks to the Christians to the Ottomans sort of pushed everybody out. Like, we're here, and these are the new ways we're going to think and believe. And an emperor could decide, we're going to be a Christian nation now, and you didn't have a lot of choice if you wanted to participate in life. Those aren't real discussions about religion. Those are really discussions about politics. Those are really discussions about culture. I think any real discussion about religion is not going to be a fight. I've been really lucky to go to Jerusalem, to go to Galilee, and to literally walk places where Jesus walked. That's very meaningful to me. This is part 2 of that. This is to come where the Apostle Paul and Philip and others came as they walked that path that when their lives were changed, they were put on that new path. And nobody needs to actually walk in those very places to have a spiritual life. But I like the metaphor that if I get to walk where Jesus walked, where his disciples have walked, maybe that will rub off on me because that's the path I'm trying to walk, wherever I am.